Hi there, I'm David Hunt, owner of GameMasters Guild, and welcome back to the Art of the Master. And in this episode, we're going to take a look at something that you unconsciously probably do anyways, and that's called Session Zero. But this time, I'm going to explain it if you don't know about it, and give you an idea maybe, if you haven't really thought about it before, what you should do on Session Zero. Let's find out. Come on. So, what exactly is Session Zero? Is it when you start playing the first session, so that's Session 1 and that's where you start? Nah, Session Zero actually happens before all that. Session Zero is when you announce to your players, hey, you're going to run a game. And during this Session Zero, the players, and it doesn't have to be organized at all. I mean, you could gather everybody at the table and talk about all this, or you could kind of pull them individually or do a group text chat or do something online, or even just meeting them at work or maybe at a local restaurant, sit down and discuss with your players exactly what they're looking for in this game. Now, you might already have the genre picked out because maybe you really want to run fantasy or science fiction, but it doesn't hurt if you want to run a game. Ask your players, what are you guys going to enjoy this time? You want to do fantasy again? You want to do science fiction? You want to do superheroes this time? We could do some kind of horror game. We can mix it up with space. What do you guys want to do? And how long would you be interested in playing? And that's kind of important too, is length, because it's pretty easy to get into a campaign, and it sounds good at first, but some games, like I ran a zombie campaign for some of my friends, and I thought it'd run a really long time. Well, they kind of got burnt out after probably about 3 months of playing, and I can understand that. So I've been trying to tailor my campaigns to where I can end them in a shorter amount of time, but if people are interested, I can keep stoking the fire and keep running that game. So I like to check with my players at Session Zero and ask them what they prefer, what they're looking for. And another thing is, Session Zero is great for the players to become familiar with the mechanics of the game if they aren't already. You can tell them genre, you can let them know about the mechanics, they can do some research, maybe they can get a book if they need to, sit down, make characters, you can help them, and that's what Session Zero is about. Other things for Session Zero is where you're going to be gathering all the resources you need. You're going to be coming with story ideas, you're going to be coming up with NPCs, important ones, not so important ones, the general thread of the campaign, the whole, maybe if there's an overarching plot, you're going to have that, or maybe like in my zombie campaign, not necessarily, they were just going from place to place, very random. It allowed me to do a lot of stuff just on the fly. And it doesn't matter if it's a small one-shot or a large campaign, all these little points are very important for you to figure out early on, that way you know where you can take the campaign and what to expect. Something else too, the characters' backstories. Are they going to plan out a short backstory just so they have something to kind of riff off of with other players, and maybe you occasionally, or are the players expecting you to do more with their backstories? This is a great time to find out, because if you're a player and you show up at a game and you wrote a very detailed backstory and figure the GM's going to dig into it at some point during the game and they never do, that's kind of a letdown. So this is a good time for everybody to put their cards on the table and to let everybody know what their expectations are. This is great. And this is also a good time to determine the size of the group that you're going to have, and when you're going to meet, and how you're going to work it out time-wise, and what you're going to do if someone doesn't show up. Or if maybe, let's say, half the party isn't there, but people still want to play, are you willing to run? I know a lot of DMs don't like to run for less than 4. I know a lot of DMs who don't like to run at all unless everybody's at the table. So it's just something for you to consider. And Session Zero is a great time to plan out all this. Now, something else that's really important too is Session Zero. And if you know the people you're playing with, you do it automatically because you know the preferences, you know how far you can go, you know when to rein it back. But if there's new people involved, even if it's somebody you think you know fairly well, like a friend of a friend, or if you're playing for a bunch of strangers or you're invited to someone else's house to run a one-shot, then maybe you need to consider your content. And session 0 is a great time to address this. And content is very, very important. I know there's a lot of games out there that DMs run that deal with adult themes. At the very least, there can easily be profanity, gratuitous violence, etc., so on and so forth. But you want to talk to your players and see what's too much. Is there anything that they don't want to touch upon? Is there anything they want to stay away from? And quite frankly, at the table, when you're asking someone what they want or don't want in a campaign, if they don't like something, well, they don't have to explain themselves. You just be like, oh, okay, you just don't want to do it. No, I just don't want anything to deal with any of that, you know. And then that's okay. That player shouldn't have to explain themselves. And there's a lot of adult themes in role-playing because a lot of adults play. And I'm not saying, you know, youths and younger kids don't play role-playing games, but when you're an adult, you end up putting more adult themes into a game. Now, obviously, you check yourself a little bit if you have more of a younger crowd, and that's easy to do. But at the same time, even with adults, sometimes certain subject matter can make them uncomfortable due to something in their past, or perhaps they just don't like that sort of thing. So you need to be very cautious. And if you want players to keep coming back to your table and having a good time, you need to broach the subject. And don't feel like you have to embarrass anybody at the table. And not that that would be your intent. But sometimes in a group setting at a table, someone's more than willing to just kind of shrug their shoulders and go, no, whatever you want is fine. And then just go along with everybody else. So it's usually best to talk to people in more of a one-on-one setting and say, hey, as a dungeon master, and we're all adults at the table, so I want to put in some adult subject matter and some adult theming, and I might cover all these different kind of topics, and my level of gratuity might gratuitous of whatever this topic is. I might go real deep into it, or just give it a surface treatment, or it's in the background. What do you think about that? Ask them their opinion, ask them how they really feel, because you don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable, and you want people to have a great time at your table, and you want to have a great time. And I know if you got somebody sitting across from you, and they're playing, but they're not into it because they're made to feel uncomfortable, and it's just something about the game they're not liking that they're not telling you, well, that's not going to be fun for you, it's not going to be fun for the other players. So you want to make sure that everybody's having a good time, that everybody's comfortable. So talk to your players. Talk to your players in private. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And, as a dungeon master, I'm highly adaptable. So if I were to go to that extreme, I can easily change it to where all that stuff, all that gratuitous stuff is set in the background, or I can use other things to emphasize those themes that I want to express without being gratuitous and in your face about it and overly descriptive. So, and it's just something you have to work on. Sometimes you might find it hard. Well, how am I supposed to do a murder mystery if I can't have a gruesome murder? And that right there, just unto itself, just the fact that you're going to have a murder mystery with a gruesome murder, that doesn't sound like much, but maybe that gruesome murder part, maybe it hits a little too close to home for somebody. So you're going to have to adjust. And there's ways to do it. There are ways to do it. Maybe you have to change the way it happens. Maybe you have to put it in the background. Maybe it's already occurred. No one gets to see it. No one gets to hear about it other than a very surface treatment. Or maybe instead of a murder, it's a disappearance. It's a mysterious disappearance. There's all sorts of things you can do. And again, I'm not very too specific, but adult themes are adult themes. And I think it kind of comes across where I'm coming from. So session 0 is a great place to get started and a great place to broach this subject matter. And again, don't embarrass anybody. Take your time, talk with people in private, 5-10 minutes, and respect people's opinions and decisions, because I got to admit, later on, it's going to work out for you because you're going to have fun and they're going to have fun. And that's what session 0 is all about, is getting everything all laid out so you and your friends can have the best time ever. So it's kind of a quick video today, but I definitely think session 0 is important, and it's something everybody does really without thinking. Because when you get ready to run a new campaign, You're always talking back and forth with the players, asking them what kind of characters they're going to make. Players are asking you what you're going to do, kind of in just a general overview. And that's what session 0 is. And then also too, again, you know your friends, you know your family, you know the kind of content that's generally appropriate. And remember, if they're strangers or people you aren't super close to, super familiar with, then you should definitely ask them about the kind of content you're going to run, unless you're confident that you're not going to offend or make anybody feel uncomfortable. Because remember, at your table, you want to have a good time, and you want everybody else at your table to have a good time. Now, if you are set on running a certain kind of content, then you're just going to have to tell people up front, listen guys, I'm going to have this kind of content in my game, and I really want it in my game for whatever reason, and if you aren't comfortable with it, then you're not going to want to play in it. So if you're definitely dead set on doing something specific and you're not willing to change it, you need to let people know. Super important. But overall, session 0 is a zero problem session, because that's where you solve all your problems and you get your plans laid down, and you're ready to go when session 1 rolls around. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Art of the Master, session 0, and I hope it gave you some ideas about getting ready to start your next RPG campaign. I'm Dave Hunt, owner of GameMasters Guild, telling you to stay safe, play great games, and I'll see you real soon.